Fantasy Source Baseball Podcast. My name is David A. Arnott, sitting here with Bill Bender, and it is a sad day for Giants fans and many, many fantasy owners around the country. Buster Posey, last we heard, broken ankle, torn knee ligaments. No idea how long he's going to be out, but it's not going to be a short amount of time.
No, it doesn't look good. It was a nasty collision at home plate last night with Scott Cousins. Scott Cousins looks like free safety barreling into Posey, and it just looked bad from the start. The preliminary reports, although not all of them have been confirmed, that it's a broken leg and some torn ligaments, and it just doesn't look good. And it's one of those. It reminded me of Carlos Santana's injury last year when he got ran over, and then he missed the rest of the season with the leg injury, and unfortunately, kind of looks like this could be the end of Posey's season.
Well, if you're one of those Posey owners, you may be despairing at the moment because catcher is a fairly thin position, and you probably drafted him on the top 3 catchers taken. What are those owners' options?
Well, you might as well go get a replacement now and not count on having Posey for a long time. There's several options out there. You might be able to grab, because some of the catchers are on the DL. Joe Mauer's also on the DL. A guy you might want to check to see if owners dropped him is Giovanni Soto. I mean, he'll give you some power. He's supposed to be back this weekend. Owners might have forgotten about him a little bit. I mean, obviously he's not having the season you want, but it's not a bad fill-in that's best case.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I feel, at least, that as someone who has Joe Mauer in our experts league and has been scrambling to just find a catcher and play matchups day after day, that you got to look for catchers that are going to do anything for you in at least one category, because you don't have the luxury of searching for a guy like Posey who's going to help you in multiple categories.
Right, and a guy Brad Pinkerton wrote about today in Hit and Run, available at the Fantasy Sources, Jonathan LaCroix. He doesn't get a lot of attention, but the guy is hitting the ball well, and you talk about giving you something. He hits .407 at Miller Park, so you know right there he's going to help you in average. He's going to score a couple of runs. He's hitting in a pretty good lineup too, but the con with him is he hits only .241 on the road. So, that's one of those guys we're talking about where he gives you something.
Yeah, I mean, especially in a daily league, there are tons of catchers out there that will not be owned. You can try to play the matchups that way. If you're in a weekly league especially, but even if you're in a not-so-deep daily league, find that catcher, let it play out a little bit. There should be, if you're in, again, not such a deep lead, should be guys like LaCroix that you say that do at least one thing okay. Talk about an extreme example of that, JPR and Sebia.
Yeah, there's another guy. He strikes out a lot because he's a young hitter, but if you look at his background, he's kind of like Buster Posey, a fellow former first-round pick, young catcher, still very raw, but over the last 10 games, Aaron Sebia, 12 RBIs, also hits in a good hitter's park, hits in a really good lineup. So there will be spots where he can contribute. He's one of those guys in head-to-head leagues. He might give you a lot one week. He might not give you anything next week. But again, it's a body, and it's a guy that's going to be in there a lot.
He's one of those guys who, like you say, has the everyday job and just swings to the fences, it seems, every time he's up there. And he's not going to have a high average. I think Zips before the season had him projected to hit something like 220. But you know what? If you don't be anything beyond that at this point from some other random guy, you should consider yourself lucky.
Right, and another guy that's on the wire, probably those other 3 guys, they may or may not be there because owners might be clued on them. I kind of like Jared Saltalamacchia and what he's been doing recently. 4 homers, 9 RBIs in May. Chances are he's not available because owners have been down that road before. But the downside with him would be he's never played in more than 84 games and never hit more than 10 homers. But he's hitting in the lineup. Boston is scoring a bunch of runs. They're scoring a bunch of runs today, so obviously there'll be some production.
You got to be careful with him, though, because the Red Sox are doing this odd thing with Jason Varitek, where I believe Varitek is caddying for 2 of their pitchers in their starting rotation. So Saltalamacchia has a slightly less than full-time load, but daily leads, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to take a look at him just because he's in such a high-powered lineup. Moving on, a guy who was kind of, I guess I would say he was definitely on fantasy managers' radar, but may have actually fallen off just because of lack of production. Buy low guy, Chris Iannetta?
He's an interesting case because his average is real low, but his OBP is really high. So if you're in a league that rewards OBP, Iannetta is a guy that should be on your roster. I kind of used him the last couple of weeks with Soto on the DL in a couple leagues, and I wasn't overly blown away, but at the same time, I wasn't disappointed with what I got out of the catcher position. He does hit lower in the order, and he can't hit on the road, but when the Rockies are at Coors Field, he's a guy that you can play. And owners that lost Posey are going to have to make some concessions. You're going to have to really watch the splits. You're going to have to find those guys that hit at home, and maybe you're going to have some down days. But so it goes. I mean, Posey was an elite catcher.
I mean, like we talked about before the season, the successful managers are not necessarily the ones that drafted best on draft at the very beginning of the season. They're the ones that are diligent, work harder than everyone else, and make the bold changes that this type of situation requires.
Right, and it's not going to be easy. There is no easy solution when a player like Posey goes down. But if you look at this season, almost every position, first base, you've had big injuries. David Wright at third base, outfield, Matt Holliday's missed time, and Joe Mauer at catcher. You look at almost every, and Chase Utley, we just got him back.
I mean, you just keep thinking of them over and over again.
And all these guys have been out. So owners may have had some practice wiggling around. You go through leagues, you look at everybody's disabled list. At one time or another, you're going to have 4 or 5 guys on it. So you have to be able to make the right moves when you do.
All right, Bill. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.